Hi there, it's John from Tutor to You. Welcome to the Economics Teacher Staffroom. In each episode we're going to consider a major topic facing economics teachers. We're going to ask our panel of experienced practitioners to give their advice and suggestions. Here we're going to discuss closing the gender gap in economics. Let's meet the panel. Hi Josie.
Hi John. I teach economics. I've been teaching economics for 15 years. I was a career changer before that. I worked in marketing. I teach in a comprehensive school in South London called the Charter School North Dulwich, where we generally have between, let's say, around 75 A-level students each year in the 2 years. We've also got a popular GCSE economics course. GCSE economics is OCR and A-level economics is AQA.
Hello everyone, my name's Cathy Williams. I'm a head of department. I work at an independent girls' school. I teach EdXL economics. At my previous school, also a girls' school, I taught AQA. Where I am at the moment is a boarding school, and we've got a reasonable number of students where English isn't their first language.
I'm Fiona McClafferty. I work as an economics and business teacher in Dubai. I used to work in tax and tax planning. So I worked for big four accountancy firms, I worked for small boutique firms, and then I made the leap to teaching economics.
Hi, I'm George Vlachonikolis. I'm a teacher of economics and have been for about 12 years now. I teach at Headington Rise School, which is an all-girls independent school in Oxford.
Is it a challenge to encourage girls to take economics? What's the main reason for this?
I teach in a girls' school, so the gender gap perhaps isn't as evident as it might be in a mixed school. But it's certainly always a bit of a challenge to recruit girls to the subject. In terms of why that is, I would absolutely support the research that's been done in the recent RES paper on tackling the gender gap in economics. One thing I see over and over is either girls not quite understanding what economics is about, or thinking they do and they get it wrong. So I think it's this very dry subject all about money that they think they're not that interested in and perhaps are not going to be very good at. I think they question a bit too where the subject might take them in terms of jobs and whether it's going to give them the enjoyment and the flexibility that they want. And I think not in my school because it's all girls, but again, one thing the research shows is that girls sometimes worry about they've got a very stereotypical view of what they think a typical male economics student will be. And I think all of these things are such a shame because economics is such a good subject for them. And certainly all of my students probably have about a quarter to a fifth of a year group studying economics in a typical year, would say without exception that they really enjoy it, and any worries they had turned out not to be the case.
I've been working for 3 years now to reduce the gender gap that I found at A-level economics when I joined the school. We're currently in our two groups of 25 students in year 12. We have 11 girls and 14 boys in each one, which is as close as I've ever got it. The gender gap is much more evident at GCSE economics, and I'm planning to look into that this year. I've got a couple of sixth formers lined up, girls who are very interested. I suppose we'll know we've really solved this problem when male year 12s are volunteering to do this investigation. But I've got these two year 12 girls who are in leadership roles, and they want to do focus groups and student voice to speak. We thought maybe they would speak to year 8 or 9 girls about why they would or wouldn't consider economics as a GCSE choice, because we think that probably the fact that they know those classes have got a disproportionate number of boys is off-putting to them taking those courses. And we think probably that means you get certain types of female students, ones who are very committed to the subject, for example. So that's this year, because I'm going to be teaching Year 10 and Year 11 GCSE economics, which I haven't done for a few years. I'm really interested in exploring why that might be.
So the first thing I've got to say is that I teach at an all-girls school, and therefore the gender gap is not really evidenced in my centre in and of itself. However, if I sort of look across at other schools nearby, then I think that gender gap is very evident. And this is a subject, as I say, as a former head of economics at an all-girls school, it's an area that I have thought an awful lot about, and I've written about it in numerous different places as well. So having taught at a girls' school for the best part of 7-8 years, I would say that there is one common thread that goes through my experience, at least, of teaching girls, which is girls' kind of relationship with failure and what it is that failure means, and how we pick ourselves back up from failure. And this would run true for everything as well that may inform this gender gap in economics. So to give you an example, it's really clear that not a lot of students come into Year 12 with an awful lot of knowledge about economics. And therefore there is this fear of, well, what if it doesn't go well? What if I fail straight away? And therefore maybe I'll just settle for chemistry, because even though I'm not brilliant at chemistry, I'm at least in my comfort zone. I've done it for a few years now. And rather than taking on a completely new subject, which I don't know if I'm any good at yet, I'll just settle for the thing that I think I'm likely to have more success in. So I think that's potentially a barrier. I think for those people that have decided that, or have labelled themselves rather bad at maths, whether they are bad at maths is a different idea, that they've labelled themselves bad at maths, and economics unfortunately has this enormous association with you must be good at maths in order to be good at economics. I mean, it's simply not true at A level. But nevertheless, I think that is a barrier. Don't get me wrong, girls outperform boys in almost every metric with regards to formal qualifications in maths, right the way through primary and secondary schools. And yet, if a girl at my school gets 90% in a maths exam, she may well externalize that achievement and decide that, it was because she got lucky, not because she was very good at maths. Whereas if you're teaching at a boys' school, a boy might get 70% in a maths exam and very much internalize that achievement and say, well, that was a great success and I'm brilliant, and so therefore I'll do very well at maths, and therefore I'll do very well at economics. So I think that's potentially a barrier as well. There's also quite a lot in the literature, though, as well, about the different reasons that girls and boys choose their A-level subjects. One of the things that boys choose their A-level subjects for is, future earnings, future wages. And if you look at that list, economics features very highly. Whereas, again, there's quite a lot of literature that says girls are more likely to choose any A-level subject based on its real-world application, whether it's likely to be in service to the community, whether it's likely to, lead to social welfare. And unfortunately, I don't think economics has that reputation. Economics is just seen as a sort of money and money management course, which of course it isn't, but that's the reputation, and therefore they are potentially less likely to choose it. So I think we have to work very hard to break down these myths about things like, it doesn't really matter if you haven't done it before. It doesn't really matter if you're not a grade 9 mathematician at GCSE. It doesn't really matter if you don't want to go into finance for a full career. And that are the things that we need to play on in our sales pitch at things like open days, and promoting the subject to parents and students when they're thinking about their A-levels.
In my Year 10 going into Year 11 class, I have 19 boys and 2 girls in my class. Whereas in my last year's Year 13 economics class, I had 6 girls and 6 boys. So at A level there wasn't. But then in some of the other classes at A level, it's been all male. So we do have a gender gap, but it tends not to be consistent across the year groups or across the classes. So we tend to find that a lot of our really strong female economists tend to be more interested in the original STEM subjects. So they want to go into medicine, they want to go into engineering, and so they're doing sciences and maths, and we lose a lot of our really good girls to science and maths at A level. We also find that girls who start economics for the first time in year 12, so we have a very large cohort of GCSE economists that come through, but we also have a fair few girls that start economics, or boys as well, that start economics from scratch in year 12. And we do find that the girls that start in year 12 tend to go on and get better grades or equal grades to those boys that have done GCSE economics. They do tend to come in perhaps maybe with more maturity because they're tackling, they've chosen the subject for the first time, they must be really interested in it. They have that maybe additional worldwide awareness maybe that an extra 2 years brings. But yes, it is very evident. But in terms of achievement, the girls tend to do as well as, if not better than, the boys.
Tell me about strategies you've used or ideas you've had that could be used to close the gender gap in different settings.
I'm hoping to get some practical advice from these students, maybe the sort of thing that these year 9s or year 8s might disclose to my year 12s that they maybe wouldn't tell me. I'm hoping to get some practical advice for how I might handle the classes so that the girls feel that it's a comfortable experience for them, because that is part of our pipeline to A-level, so we don't want to put girls off who would be excellent A-level students.
Things like being very welcoming and making it really obvious that I simply don't care about prior knowledge. I'm going to assume no knowledge when you start the course, and therefore it really doesn't matter if you don't know anything about economics. I will point to my exam results from the previous summer. Fortunately, I'm in a position where they've been relatively good, and I'll say these have all been achieved by people who had no economics, just like you, and look where they've come in 2 years. Another thing I'll do is I'll be very, very keen to point out the myth that you need to be a strong mathematician to succeed at economics. It's just simply not true at A-level. It may well be true at university, but it isn't true at A-level. So I will always make sure that I try and impress that upon my potential students, and indeed the students that are in class with me. I will try to minimize the amount of math that they have to do, notwithstanding that they'll have to do some. But let's be clear about this. Maths in economics A-level doesn't mean punching in lots of numbers to calculators most of the time. It's usually much more about data analysis and making inferences or making conclusions about data than actually worrying too much about formulae. I also think it's just simply true that we should try and celebrate female role models within our subject more. We're living in a time when there are plenty of female role models within our subject out there. People like Christine Lagarde, Christina Georgieva, Janet Yellen not too long ago down in the US Treasury. We've got Rachel Reeves, the first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer. I mean, we should be celebrating these. We should be drawing our girls' attention towards them, not so that they necessarily do a research project, but just putting them on the board, celebrating their work. And then finally, making it about the real world. Girls are much more likely to base their A-level choices based on their application within the real world, doing good for the community, improving social welfare. So let's make economics about that. Let's make sure that we're putting new stories in front of them which aren't always related to the price of Bitcoin or the price of oil, which frankly might be a bit dull and a bit boring to some. Let's look at things like fast fashion and the negative externalities being caused by fast fashion, by Shein. Let's look at things like festivals and the negative externalities associated with litter coming from festivals. I think that sort of stuff is likely to be more engaging and much more likely to win the attention of your female students.
So some of the things that we have done have been really try to promote economics with the younger years. So we've done things like the share game. We try to make the most of opportunities where we're talking to students about what's going on in the economy. For example, in the extracurricular activity, the Investors Club that's become the Investor/Economics Club. There's also things like the FT Advocate program, FT for Schools. Advertise the FT for Schools quite a lot around the school. We try to in the Business and Economics department, really trying to make the most of chatting to girls about, economics is so useful. If you go into engineering, then economics is actually useful too, because yes, you may be an engineer, but you're also going to be having to take into account the wider economics around what's happening with your projects. We also celebrate our achievements. We have a kind of a wall of fame on the department board where they can see who got the A stars, who got the 9s, and it does tend to be lots of girls up there. So we like to show that they have there are role models for them. I also really highlight the achievements of some of my girls who have gone on to study economics at university. With their permission, I tend to use their LinkedIn profiles and saying to the guys or the girls, look at this, look at what she did.
I think I have sort of two main strands to my strategy. First is to try and address really quite head on some of the main misconceptions. So I know my students find it very difficult sometimes to understand exactly what economics is. So I tend to talk much more about what economists do and really paint this very true, but I think very appealing picture of how it's all about people and how economists make the world a better place, and that it really is a subject for people that have an interest in all of that, an interest in equity and trying to make things better. I do a lot as well on the transferable skills around economics. I will have said again and again and again, it's almost like being a superhero. It gives you this knowledge and these skills that you can do anything really and take on any job. So as an economist, you don't have to just be thinking about working in that field directly, although that's great if you do, but skills that are just so highly valued by all employers out there. And I do quite a lot to try and take the risk out of making this choice. I find for a lot of my students, it feels very risky, and a lot of girls can be quite risk averse. So any opportunity to do anything further down the school, I will take that. I produce a weekly sort of one-page publication talking about stories in the news and how economists would think about that. I run activities with other departments, really trying to showcase what economics is all about. So I did an edible economics, polynomics, doing something with our eco team next year. And I think more than anything, almost trying to get my students to understand that the risk is in not taking economics rather than actually studying it. And it's something that they can really enjoy, genuinely really enjoy, and genuinely do very, very well at.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Economics Teacher Staffroom.